In the wee hours of dawn, after destruction, we face a dilemma. And the dilemma here is how to survive, and survive humanely and courageously in a authoritarian, autocratic, increasingly fascist regime, which is what awaits. And I don't mean to be an alarmist. We've lived through 4 years of Trump. We saw the people he tried to put in charge. Most of those people left his administration. Secretaries of Defense, Secretaries of State, etc., because they considered Trump to be irrational, dangerous, unpatriotic, and amoral. A great portion of those people, including his vice president, refused to endorse him. So this time Trump is surrounding himself with a coterie, I should say, of loyalists. So one thing you'll see in every secretary pick is not necessarily a consistent policy, but you will see a person who has demonstrated to Trump a willingness to abdicate their own autonomy and their own common sense to his will. In other words, you're seeing people who have no spines or backbones, as we say. And so soon we will have an administration. Maybe one or two of these people will be cut out by the Senate process, but the Senate will be controlled by 53 Republicans. About 5 of those Republicans are sort of uncommitted to Trump and somewhat free to vote their conscience. And so there's some hope in the Senate that they could curtail Trump's appointees. Not a lot of hope. But we have Susan Collins, we have Lisa Murkowski, we have Todd Young from Indiana, we have Cassidy from Louisiana. Maybe we'll have the new Republican Senator McCormick from Pennsylvania. We'll see, but we'll have maybe 5 people we can count on as a firewall in the Senate. And the Republicans have a tiny majority in the House. So if Trump is able to corral all of his troops to his will, then he'll get most of his picks through the confirmation process, which means that we'll have a majority of cabinet people who are not professionals in their fields, are not adequate or sufficient for their positions, but who are thoroughly loyal to Trump. And that's what we are going to see. And then, after January, we'll see the implementation of the mass deportation policies, which will begin with about 1 million people and will increase to many millions. We will see a crackdown on transgender individuals. We will see a crackdown on all education systems that teach history, that teach philosophy, that teach cultural theory, that teach critical thinking. We will see a crackdown on medical systems. We will see an attempt to destroy the Affordable Care Act, which very well might succeed. we will probably see militias or vigilantes or parts of the military entering into our civilian spaces to control those who dissent and those who protest. We will see basically a wretched breakdown of the norms of democracy. And I do not believe that we will have an easy election in 2 years, because Trump and all of his loyal allies in the House and the Senate and in his cabinet will be telling us that if the Democrats win, there was some sort of fraud. So we see that we're at the precipice of the end of democracy as we know it for the first time ever, with a barely coherent 78-year-old psychopathic criminal rapist in charge. And those are just kind of basic facts. Now, I'm not trying to minimize the mistakes that Democrats have made, and I think they've made serious mistakes, particularly in terms of creating a party system that has been unresponsive to the needs of most working people. You know, the Democratic Party used to be the party of the working people, the Labour Party. In England, they call our equivalent, the equivalent of the Democratic Party is just called Labour. And we used to be the party of labor, which is why we were the party of unions. We are the party that got the 5-day work week. We are the party that got children out of the industrial work process. Child labor was outlawed by Democrats. We are the ones that put in charge workplace safety measures that would protect people's bodies from death and massive injury in the workplace. We are the ones that created Social Security and Medicare and set up the safety net for working people. And in these last few election cycles, we have not done a good job communicating to working people that we are on their side. So they felt abandoned. Inflation's gone up, which was a result of COVID and supply chain backups. But people felt it, and we didn't really respond with a tremendous amount of empathy. And in general, prices have gone up, houses have gone up, college has gone up, everything has gone up. And there hasn't been a really serious, substantive, muscular plan put in place with a name that people could recognize, like the New Deal or something, to lift us out of this. You know, Biden just couldn't communicate. He was absolutely incapable of any sort of communication, as was his entire team. And Kamala tried, but she had 3 months, and it was really hard for her to put together, what would normally have been a 1.5-year campaign, and to message appropriately. And so we just never had a really good, solid, clear message to working people. And working people are the majority of the country, and working people don't have time to read the New Yorker and the Wall Street Journal and the Atlantic, and to catch up on all the news lately. They have to work and take care of their families and feed their families, and their lives are not luxurious. And so those of us, and I include myself in this category, who are part of this sort of like middle class, who can afford a little bit of luxury and a little eating out, and who are not in debt, and so forth. You know, a lot of us, I'm not saying myself particularly, because I've been warning and other people of this and talking about it for a while, but I think the elite of the Democratic Party, which is much of the Democratic Party, wrote off the challenges of regular working people. And we replaced those serious economic issues that Bernie Sanders talks about so frequently, with a bunch of kind of culture war bullshit, you know. I mean, obviously, women's reproductive rights is beyond culture war. I mean, that's a serious human rights issue. It's, you know, it transcends culture war. That's like, you know, that's like slavery, or segregation, you know. Women's reproductive rights seem to me to be foundational and fundamental in a democracy. But, you know, we got really carried away with a lot of, and I'm speaking as a gay person, but with a lot of this LGBTQ stuff and the trans stuff and the bathroom stuff and the pronoun stuff and the, you know, democracy, inclusion, you know, standards for universities and corporations and the military. And I think that sort of like, diluting of the meritocratal, is that right? The meritocracy process. And that pissed a lot of people off because, you know, most people aren't really thinking about bathroom laws and pronouns. They're thinking about putting food on the table. And so we lost a lot of people. And also we messed up on the border. You know, it's insane to have a completely open, flowing border when you're in a country where 60% of the people can't live paycheck to paycheck. And those people are reliant on public services like hospitals and schools and clinics and firefighters and so forth. And if you have a massive influx of immigrants, then all of those services are diluted. You know, and even though this country is a country of immigrants, it has always been a country of immigrants. It should be a country of immigrants. The immigrants of this country are beautiful, wonderful people for the most part. I know many of them and I love them. They are the kind of heart and soul in many ways of like the new America, and they always have been, whether it was Jews or Italians or the Irish or whatever at any point. But at this point with the quote, open border, which was, you know, kind of a pretty open border, with the influx of millions and millions and millions of undocumented workers, it really did jig up our system, like in a way that really hurt a lot of working communities. And so that's real. So we shouldn't condescend and think that is all just a bunch of BS. The people have legitimate concerns about resources and about communities and about borders. So the Democrats dropped the ball. And now the party, I think, is like, you know, is in a dark place. It's lost. It's in the midnight of the soul, so to speak. It's in the wilderness, as Jesus once was. And it must seek its rebirth. And that's a good thing, I think, for the Democratic Party to figure out what it's really about and to push outside of all of this sort of like kind of frustrating culture war bullshit. And also to remember that we were the party that challenged big corporations. We challenged big pharma. We challenged big medicine. And somehow with COVID, we got swooped into that kind of network, you know, like suddenly refusing to challenge the pharmaceutical interests and the medical interests and the corporate interests if they were aligned with us on some sort of abstract way. And I think we need to get back to our roots. We were a rugged, questioning party, a party of working people, a party of immigrants, a party that set up the social safety net that we have today. We were the party of civil rights. We were the party in many ways of prosperity. We were the party that was able to defeat Hitler and the Axis during World War II. The Democratic Party is a great party, but it has lost itself, and it needs to find a new grounding, a new bearing, a new place of earth to put down its feet. And it has to be solid. It has to be able to talk to regular people of all backgrounds. And yes, of course, we're going to support the rights of gay people. And of course, we're going to support reproductive rights. Of course we do. But we can keep our eye on the ball. And the ball is overall economic equality and fairness and justice. That's always been the game of the Democratic Party. And we've been distracted by a bunch of other issues that were really sort of privileged sort of issues. So we have time to take our breath and to reconstitute and to gather our senses and to figure out a way out of the wilderness, because there's a tough, rough, I fear a dark battle of sorts ahead between those who wish to scrap the Constitution and scrap our great history of advancing rights for all people, and to throw away our environment, and to belittle our strides toward fairness and decency and equity. There's a real struggle between that force. I see it as a dark force, and a force for greater community, for greater accountability, for decency, fairness, justice. I hope a party that believes in peace and reconciliation, an environmental party, a party that cares about health, first and foremost, the health of our people, which we've forgotten about, I believe. And the party of labor. We need to stake our route out of this wilderness, and it will take time. And it's not a fun place to be in. But at least we can see the other side more clearly as Trump begins to put his administration together with buffoons and jerk-offs and entertainers and ideologues and snake oil salesmen. It's our time to be the adults here, so we have work to do. Lots of work to do, much more to talk about. Good night.